Following on from last episode's movie-like backdrop and plot, this week we have further links to the movies. Not only because Hollywood is the dizzying setting for our case, but because the primary victim was a talented cameraman working on high-profile projects in Tinseltown. We've heard stories of so-called black widows with death following certain women wherever they went. But in today's case, our antagonist became known as the Green Widow. But if you want to know why, then you will have to join us on our disturbing journey into a marriage, into delusions of grandeur, and the belief in fame and fortune at all costs. This is the case of Mary Ellen Samuels, the so-called Green Widow, and this is Murder of Crows. Hollywood, sometimes informally called Tinseltown, is a neighborhood and district in the central region of Los Angeles County, California, within the city of Los Angeles. Its name has become synonymous with the US film industry and the people associated with it. Many notable film studios such as Sony Pictures, Walt Disney Studios, Paramount Pictures, Warner Brothers and Universal Pictures are located in or near Hollywood. Hollywood was incorporated as a municipality in 1903. The northern and eastern parts of the neighborhood were consolidated with the city of Los Angeles in 1910, and soon thereafter the prominent film industry migrated to the area. Dieter Wilcox, who donated land to help in the original development of Hollywood in the 1880s, learned of the name Hollywood from an acquaintance who owned an estate by that name in Illinois, according to Wilcox, who also said, "I chose the name Hollywood simply because it sounds nice, and because I'm superstitious and Holly is believed to bring good luck." She recommended that name to her husband, Harvey H. Wilcox, who had purchased 120 acres on February the 1st, 1887. It wasn't until August 1887 that Wilcox decided to use that name and filed with the Los Angeles County Recorder's Office on a deed and parcel map of the property. By 1900, the region had a post office, a newspaper, a hotel, and 2 markets. A single-track streetcar line ran down the middle of Prospect Avenue from it, but service was infrequent and the trip took 2 hours. An old citrus fruit packing house was converted into a livery stable, improving transportation for the inhabitants of Hollywood. The Hollywood Hotel was opened in 1902 by Whitley, president of the Los Pacific Boulevard and Development Company, having finally acquired the Heard parcel of property and subdivided it. Whitley built the hotel to attract land buyers. Flanking the west side of Highland Avenue, the structure fronted onto Prospect Avenue, which later became known as Hollywood Boulevard. And though it was still a dusty, unpaved road, it was regularly graded and gravelled, and the hotel became internationally known and was the centre of the civic and social life and home of movie stars for many years. By 1912, major motion picture companies had come west to set up production near to or in Los Angeles. In the early 1900s, most motion picture camera and equipment patents were held by Thomas Edison's Motion Picture Patents Company in New Jersey, and this often sued filmmakers to stop their productions. But in order to escape this, filmmakers began moving to Los Angeles, where attempts to enforce Edison's patents were easier to evade. In addition, the weather was ideal for filmmaking, and there was quick access to various different settings. And as such, Los Angeles became the capital of the film industry in the United States. The mountains, plains, and low land prices made Hollywood a good place to establish film studios. Director D.W. Griffith was the first to make a motion picture in Hollywood. His 17-minute short film, In Old California, from 1910, was filmed for the Biograph Company. Although Hollywood itself banned movie theatres, of which it had none before annexation that year, wider Los Angeles had no such restriction. The first studio in Hollywood opened in early 1913 on Formosa Avenue. And then later, four major film companies, Paramount, Warner Brothers, RKO, and Columbia, all had studios in Hollywood, as did several minor companies and rental studios. In the 1920s, Hollywood was the fifth largest industry in the entire nation. By the 1930s, Hollywood studios had become fully vertically integrated, as production, distribution, and exhibition was controlled by these companies, enabling Hollywood to produce some 600 films per year. A large sign reading Hollywoodland was erected in the Hollywood Hills in 1923 to advertise real estate developers, Woodruff's and Schutz housing developments. But in 1949, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce entered a contract with the city of Los Angeles to repair and rebuild the sign. The agreement stipulated that land be removed to just spell Hollywood, so the sign would now refer to the entire district rather than just the housing development. During the early 1950s, the state of California constructed the Hollywood Freeway through the northeast corner of Hollywood. The Hollywood Walk of Fame was created in 1958 as a tribute to artists and other significant contributors to the entertainment industry, and its official opening was on February the 8th, 1960. The Academy Awards, which honour the preceding year in film, have been held every year in late February to early March since 2004. Prior to 2004, they were held in late March, early April. Since 2002, the Oscars have been held at the Dolby Theatre, formerly known as the Kodak Theatre, at Hollywood Boulevard and Highland Avenue, with the exception of 2020, when due to the COVID pandemic, they were held in Los Angeles Union Station. Hollywood became known as Tinseltown and the Dream Factory because of the glittering image of the movie industry. And it becomes our setting today for a less than glittering story. When you look at high school photos of our two players, it's a classic tale, a stunning homecoming queen and an ordinary guy with a camera who admired her from afar. Mary Ellen Gurnick was the unattainable dream girl, beautiful, popular and seemingly destined for stardom, while Bob Samuels was the nice guy with big dreams and talent behind a camera. He knew his crush on Mary Ellen was an unrealistic dream, but he couldn't help feeling how he felt. But it would be years later that their paths would cross again. By then, Mary Ellen was a single mother with a daughter named Nicole, and Bob had become successful working behind the scenes in Hollywood. The formerly unattainable beauty was suddenly within reach. Their differing lives and relative successes had made them, in Bob's mind, much more equal. A relationship blossomed and finally wedding bells rang in 1980. Bob not only married his high school crush, but also officially adopted her daughter, Nicole, creating what appeared to be the perfect family. His home had become a family home, and he was focused on being the role model that Nicole needed and the husband that Mary Ellen wanted. Anyone who knew him knew what a committed family man Bob was becoming. But all that glitters is not gold, and behind the facade, Mary Ellen's failure to become an actress did not mean that she didn't crave that lifestyle. Mary Ellen hadn't become the star that she originally envisioned. Her acting career never materialized beyond a few stalking advertisements. The Hollywood lifestyle that she craved, with red carpets, paparazzi and adoration, wasn't coming through her workaholic husband's behind-the-scenes career. The life of a cameraman was much more humdrum than the life that Mary Ellen wanted, and she grew bored with the suburban life. And boredom for Mary Ellen took dangerous forms. While Bob worked grueling hours on film sets, Mary Ellen began spending extravagantly. She flirted openly with other men. She partied constantly. She used cocaine, and people who knew Mary Ellen saw that she had a ready-made prop for her lifestyle, because she drew her teenage daughter Nicole into her increasingly chaotic lifestyle, with one witness recalling, "They were like twins. I remember one time there was a wedding and they came, and it was a nice, pretty afternoon wedding, and Nicole and Mary Ellen walked in wearing matching twin leather jumpsuits, skin tight. I mean, they looked like Catwoman." But it wasn't just about clothes. Mary Ellen was turning her daughter into a partner in crime at a much more malevolent level. A detective who looked back on the case later said she used her 16-year-old daughter to look for hitmen. She drew her 16-year-old daughter into her evil plotting. After 6 turbulent years of marriage, Bob and Mary Ellen separated in 1986. She moved into a condo with Nicole, but the bills, every single last one of them, still went to Bob. Even after they separated, Bob supported Mary Ellen and her lifestyle. For 2 years they lived apart while Bob clung to the faint hope that they might reconcile. Mary Ellen had no such intentions, but she enjoyed the financial support. Then in late 1988 something changed. Bob, who had just turned 40, finally accepted reality. He decided to move forward with divorce proceedings. Now, when Mary Ellen sat down and looked at the financial consequences of a divorce, she was less than thrilled. Divorce meant cutting off her money supply. But widowhood, on the other hand, would mean access to all the money with no restrictions. She was determined to make that happen, and was far from secretive about it, though whether people took her seriously is hard to tell. One witness during the eventual trial said she spent 2 years pretty much talking to everybody that she met in those circles about how much she hated her husband and how much that she wanted to have him killed. Mary Ellen's search for a hitman became almost comical in its brash, brazen openness. She discussed various murder scenarios with anyone who would listen, from dropping something on Bob's head to having the garage door crush and kill him. Several people took her money and disappeared into the ether. Others just dismissed her as being all talk with no genuine intentions. But Mary Ellen was deadly serious, and she found her perfect mark in Jimmy Bernstein, who was a drug dealer who fell head over heels for her daughter Nicole. But instead of directly hiring Bernstein, she created an elaborate emotional trap by using Bernstein's feelings for Nicole to make him want to hurt the loving family man. Nicole, who was just 16, pretended to be engaged to Bernstein while simultaneously being engaged to another man. Okay then. Mary Ellen then fed Bernstein an horrific lie that Nicole had been sexually abused by Bob for years, and it lit a fire in him to do things with a sense of righteousness, like riding a white horse into the sunset, trying to save these damsels in distress. Such was the manipulative brilliance by which they'd set this up, and by making him think it was the right thing to do, would then make it easier to tip him over into being willing to kill. And to complete the deception, Mary Ellen showed up with fake bruises, claiming that Bob had beaten her. But in reality, unsurprisingly, the bruises were from a recent plastic surgery procedure. Bernstein, convinced he was protecting the woman that he loved, agreed to kill Bob Samuels for a mere $1,500. The night it happened was an ordinary night. Bob came home from working on Lethal Weapon 2. He showered and was planning to head to use his tanning bed so he could look good in Hollywood, but he never made it as far as his tanning bed. Someone got into his house and Bob was attacked in his front hallway. He was badly beaten and then suffocated with a pillow. He was just 40 years old. Now this then became the time that Mary Ellen needed to paint a picture of an amicable and caring ex, unaware that Bob was no longer able to talk or indeed do anything anymore. So she went about painting such a picture. While Bob's body lay in the hallway of his home, Mary Ellen began her cover-up. She called his answering machine repeatedly over the next 2 days. "Hi Bob, it's Mary Ellen. Listen, I'd like to leave the dog with you for a while this Friday. Nicole and I have something to do. Could you call and let me know if that's all right?" "Hi Bobby, it's me. Haven't heard back from you about Friday. I guess you're busy working, but could you give me a dingle?" "Are you there, Bob? Why aren't you picking up?" "Maybe I'll just bring the dog over anyway." Messages left for a corpse, and it was a very calculated attempt to paint her as an innocent party in this whole endeavour. 2 days after the murder, Mary Ellen and Nicole arrived at Bob's house, supposedly to drop off the dog, as mentioned in the messages. They discovered Bob's body, but before calling 911, they staged a burglary scene. They pulled out drawers, they toppled furniture. They even took a crowbar to the door frame to make it appear as if someone had broken in. Only then did Mary Ellen call 911, sounding appropriately distraught. She was an actress of some kind after all, but at the police station Mary Ellen played the role of grieving widow. But the detectives weren't buying her performance. But despite those suspicions, the police had no evidence to tie Mary Ellen to the crime. She walked away free and rich. She inherited everything Bob had worked for his entire life, plus a $250,000 life insurance policy. But if the police were suspicious already, her performance at Bob's funeral only heightened these suspicions. While others mourned, she wore a tight backless black cocktail dress and acted like she was at a Hollywood premiere. One attendee later said, "She was running around like it was some kind of showing, like a party, instead of a time to mourn. This was not a woman in mourning. I smelt a rat." But with no charges filed, Mary Ellen began spending Bob's money at an astonishing rate. She bought a Porsche. She bought a condo in Cancun. She bought fur coats. She threw herself lavish parties with hired limousines. She even moved back into Bob's house, simply throwing a rug over the blood-stained carpet in the hallway where he had died, like it was an inconvenience. But Mary Ellen's fantasy life was about to face an unexpected bump in the road. Jimmy Bernstein, the man who had killed Bob Samuels, was having second thoughts. He had discovered that Nicole wasn't really in love with him. He saw Mary Ellen spending the money from Bob's death wildly and freely, while he got nothing but $1,500. Worse than that, he realized he'd been manipulated into committing murder based on lies about abuse that never actually happened. For Mary Ellen, there was only one solution to a loose end like Jimmy Bernstein. Finding another hitman wasn't difficult for Mary Ellen. She had practice. She targeted Paul Gall, a man in dire financial straits, and his friend Daryl Ray Edwards. The prosecutor later said, Mary Ellen Samuels was very good at identifying people who were at a point in their lives where they were easily manipulated. Either young, vulnerable people, people who had issues or problems with drugs. She convinced Paul that Jimmy was a drug dealer who had contributed to his brother's death. To seal the deal, she manipulated Paul's girlfriend, Anne Hamley, into the conspiracy as well. Mary Ellen knew the power of emotional connection, so she would always weave stories where she and her potential hitman had been wronged by the same person. While Mary Ellen established an alibi by vacationing in Cancun, Paul Gall and Daryl lured Jimmy into a car, strangled him, and threw his body into a ravine. But the situation would soon unravel, and it would be Mary Ellen's own flippancy and greed that would trigger the event that led to the plot being uncovered. During the Cancun trip, Mary Ellen celebrated her newfound wealth and freedom in a way that would ultimately seal her fate. She laid naked on a hotel bed while her new boyfriend covered her body with approximately $20,000 in $20 bills, taking photographs of the bizarre scene. And that photograph would become known as the Green Widow shot, and would play a crucial role in her eventual conviction. A month after Jimmy's murder, his body was discovered. When investigators went to his home, they found paperwork linking him to Bob Samuel's killing. They also discovered a $25,000 life insurance policy Jimmy had taken out the day after Bob was killed, naming Nicole as his sole beneficiary. But the case truly broke open when Anne Hamley, Paul Gall's girlfriend, who had also been drawn in by Mary Ellen's manipulative tactics, feared that she knew too much and might become Mary Ellen's next target. And through fear, she confessed everything to the police. She implicated Paul Gall, who, when faced with a possible death penalty, quickly gave up Mary Ellen. When detectives brought Mary Ellen in for questioning again, her denials fell flat. At her trial, Mary Ellen tried desperately to maintain her image. She dressed conservatively. She attempted to appear prim and proper. When confronted with evidence, Mary Ellen claimed the police only targeted her because officers wanted to date her, and she had refused. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution had the $1,500 check that she had written to Bernstein, Paul Gall's testimony, Anne Hamley's testimony, the records of her extravagant spending after Bob's death, and of course the infamous Green Widow photo showing her naked, covered in cash. The prosecutor said about the photograph, "It just showed right through this photograph exactly what this woman was made of." Mary Ellen Samuels was convicted of both murders and sentenced to death. She had earned a place on California's death row, and so had finally joined one of the exclusive clubs in California. Paul Gall testified against Mary Ellen, served his time, and was eventually paroled. Daryl Ray Edwards remains in prison. Nicole, who prosecutors decided not to charge, changed her name and moved away. She reportedly has children of her own now and refuses to discuss her past. Mary Ellen's elderly parents, who testified that she had been given everything as a child, never knew anything about her Cancun condo or her Porsche. Despite living just 2 hours away from them, Mary Ellen had visited her fragile parents only once during her year-long spending spree. Bob Samuels is buried in his hometown of Santa Ana, California. He was a good, hard-working man who simply fell in love with the wrong woman. A former homecoming queen whose fantasy of wealth and glamour and a certain lifestyle evolved into a deadly obsession. Mary Ellen Samuels finally got what she always wanted: fame. But instead of becoming known as a Hollywood starlet, she'll forever be remembered as the Green Widow, one of California's most notorious female killers. But rather than this infamous Twatus Maximus, this video is dedicated to the kind, caring family man who just wanted to adore the woman he had always loved and create a home for the girl he came to class as his own daughter. He was a good man, and I send love to all of those whose lives were impacted by the loss of this all-round good egg. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. Please consider subscribing if you haven't yet, and channel memberships are available for as little as 99p a month if you want to support me further. But with that said, I'm Steve. Samson doesn't like the heat and is flat out on the floor by my feet. So in his absence, I will just say, I'm Steve, and I'll see you when I see you.
You're ready, but you won't like it. You say that